This is the video animated version of the Radwa and Radwa podcast, where we aim to communicate scientific research to science enthusiasts. We post 4 versions of each episode, in English and Arabic, and in podcast and YouTube video formats. All the links are in the description below. You will also find our references in the description. We are your hosts, Radwa Ewaisha
and Radwa Sharaf,
PhDs, pharmacists, and molecular biologists.
In our episode today, we will be discussing the origin of vaccine hesitancy and the impact of that hesitancy on our human health. Radwa, can you tell us a little bit more about vaccines and how there are many stories of successes over the years that we've witnessed in this world?
Yes, so vaccination is considered to be a very cost-effective healthcare intervention. Actually, it comes second to providing clean water to the public. The World Health Organization estimates that childhood vaccination prevents between 4 to 5 million deaths worldwide each year, and that immunization between 2021 and 2030 can prevent 51 million deaths. Let's take polio as a case study. In the 19th and 20th centuries, polio used to be the most feared disease in the world. It killed or paralyzed 500,000 people each year. Very recently, many countries are now polio-free thanks to the vaccines that were developed in the 20th century. And if we take COVID as another example, a study that was published in The Lancet estimated that in the first year of the rollout of COVID vaccines, 20 million lives were saved because of the COVID vaccines. Those were all people who were going to die because of COVID. They were saved because of the COVID vaccines.
So, as you've just shared with us, vaccines not only help prevent the acquisition of an infection, but at the same time, if someone acquires the infection, then at least the symptoms of the disease are mitigated. So, unfortunately, recently there's been a wave of people who are hesitant about taking vaccines or giving vaccines to their children, and it almost seems like vaccines are a victim of their own success. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so they are a victim of their own success in the sense that people no longer see diseases such as polio. So some of these diseases were eliminated. And so that's why the fear of these diseases has also been almost eliminated. And so people are now talking about if vaccines are going to harm them, and they don't think about whether the disease is going to harm them and harm their children. The history of vaccine refusal and vaccine hesitancy actually goes back to the age of vaccines themselves. So when Edward Jenner created the very first world vaccine, which was the vaccine against smallpox, many people were skeptic of the practice and were hesitant to accept it. But we can talk about 2 events in the 20th century that caused a shift in public opinion. So, for the DTP vaccine, which is the vaccine against diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, there was a documentary that came out in 1982 that was titled DPT Vaccine Roulette, and a book on the same subject called A Shot in the Dark. These affected public opinion in an extensive way. So the documentary misreported research results on the vaccine, and it alleged that the DTP vaccine caused seizures and permanent brain damage in children. And while seizures were a rare adverse reaction known to the vaccine, there was no permanent or long-term damage that was documented. And so this resulted in a decline in vaccination rates from 81% to 31%, and it led to a pertussis outbreak, which put so much burden on the NHS, which is healthcare system in the UK. Another event was the Wakefield study in 1998. In 1998, Andrew Wakefield published a fraudulent paper in The Lancet that falsely linked the MMR vaccine to colitis and autism in children. An extensive investigation exposed this fraud and revealed that Wakefield and the research that he was doing was funded by lawyers of parents involved in lawsuits against vaccine manufacturers, and that this was a conflict of interest that he failed to disclose. The paper was later retracted, and Andrew Wakefield was struck off the medical register. Because of these two events and other rumors and misconceptions that spread among people, many people are hesitant to accept vaccines. And there's sometimes a lack of trust in the pharmaceutical industry and in healthcare. Because of social media, this misinformation is circulating. It is estimated that of all misinformation on social media, misinformation related to vaccines represent 43% of all misinformation.
That's a quite high percentage. Unfortunately, this number really did have an impact on the take up of vaccines. I think many of the listeners may be aware and remember the Disneyland measles outbreak that happened in California not too long ago in 2015, where some children that ended up visiting the park were not vaccinated against measles. They didn't take the MMR vaccine because of their parents' vaccine hesitancy. And we ended up seeing an outbreak of a disease that is very much preventable with this vaccine. So, do you have examples of how this has impacted our disease incidence?
Yes, so as you said, we are seeing a reappearance of previously eliminated diseases such as polio and measles. Many people think that because there's a low incidence of these diseases that we no longer need the vaccine, but that's not true because once the immunity of the public goes down, we start to see an increase in the incidence of these diseases. So that's very unfortunate that these preventable diseases are actually reappearing.
Yeah, we start seeing a decline in herd immunity, and then it's easier for someone to contract an infection and pass it on to someone else who's not vaccinated. It's quite unfortunate. What pieces of advice do you have, Radwa, for folks listening to us today?
It's important to remember the impact of the disease. Many people forget that these diseases used to affect millions of people. They used to cause death. They affected children. They affected families. And when people forget the impact of these diseases, such as polio, they start to talk about the impact of vaccines, which is in no way, shape, or form comparable to the impact of disease on individuals and on society. It's also important to be responsible when sharing messages on social media and on WhatsApp. Just remember that one rumor or one piece of misinformation can destroy years of research and years of vaccine success. And we can easily go back to the times when used to be so many deaths and high prevalence of disease because of these diseases that are now preventable because of vaccines. So if we get a message or video or something that talks about vaccines as being toxic or being harmful to people, just pause for a moment and think, are you 100% sure that this message is correct? Before sharing this on to someone else, just ask someone or make sure that this is scientifically sound before sharing this information.
Great. So we all really need to follow the evidence and findings from reproducible research that has been validated in multiple labs. And the bulk of evidence so far from scientific research is that vaccines, by and large, are a safe mechanism to prevent disease acquisition and reduce the severity of disease if an infection is acquired. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Feel free to reach out with suggestions for future episodes or leave us a comment directly on our YouTube video. See you next time!